right, let's talk about what you're going to get in your DIY kit when you get it home. You will have 4 cookies, different shapes. You will actually have 12 altogether, but there's 4 different shapes. You'll have some icing. You're going to have a paper plate, a napkin, some lovely sprinkles, and you will also have a toothpick. I will not be using a toothpick, I will be using a scribe, but same concept, it's just a pointed needled instrument. And that's what is included in your kit. What other things do you need? Some scissors is great because you're going to need to cut your bags. And I like to use cupcake liners to hold my sprinkles because you want to take them out of this packaging, and you want to put them into something. So you could use like little glass containers if you have like little ramekins, or any sort of little plastic containers. But I like to use just cupcake liners because I can still restack them and use them again, or use them for cupcakes later. So what I would suggest doing to start off with would be to go ahead and prep all of your sprinkles. So basically I'm going to cut open each of these little sprinkle containers and carefully try to pour them into your little whatever you're holding them. You could put them on your plate, would probably be a smarter idea. And you just want to get them into something that will hold them so that you don't have to try to do sprinkles using this packaging. This packaging helps me transport the sprinkles and get them to you guys, but it definitely does not help when we're doing sprinkles. So again, doing it over the plate helps like that, because basically this is what our plate is for. We're going to basically fold it in half and just put our sprinkles in there. I will say the nonpareils, which are these little balls, these tend to go everywhere. You can see they're all over my workspace now, but they tend to go everywhere, so just kind of be aware of that. So you want to do that with all of your sprinkles, and then we want to cut our bags. So when you cut your bags all have a seam down the middle, and your bag will not be as full as my bag, but you'll have a seam down the middle. It's only one seam on the whole bag. I like to have it running down the middle, and I like to try to kind of make all the icing get out of that so that I can flatten it really flat so that you have a nice straight place to cut. And if you have a click pin, this really helps. So if you click it out and you kind of line it up with the tip of the bag, with the tip of the pin, and then if you can unclick the pin, you want to cut your bag as much of that as long as that pin tip is. So I like to use the click pin because it's a really easy kind of reference. You want to try to make a cut straight across, but you want to basically make your cuts about this length, about the length of a click pin when it's clicked out. That's just an easy reference. As we work through the cookies, you will start to see whether you need to make a bigger cut. Probably will, but it's always easier to start small and work your way up. You can't put stuff back on the plastic bags, so always start small. Start with that, work with it for a little while. If it's hard to flood, and we'll kind of talk about this as we go through the cookies, then go ahead and cut a little bit more off, but by little bit, it's just a little bit at a time. Okay, the first cookie we're going to start with is the Christmas tree cookie. And I am going to be using my nonpareils for the ornaments on the tree, so I'm going to have those close by. If you wanted to put your cookie on your paper plate, you could, to catch any of the extras, but I'm really not dumping them on. I'm just going to be sprinkling them on, so they should be okay. And I also have a little star for the top of the tree. You could definitely use more stars if you wanted to, or if you have other sprinkles that look like ornaments, feel free to use those as well. And we're going to be working on 2 different concepts, outlining and flooding. So that's why I picked this cookie first, because this cookie has just a really simple outline and flood. So I have my paper towel here. That's just to wipe off my toothpick if I need to, or to have my icing bag set on it. My icing bags over here are kind of curled up so that the icing doesn't continue to flow out. If you just leave them, they will do that. They will just kind of flow out. You want to make sure your cookie doesn't have any kind of crumbs on it, dust on it. Also watch when you cut your bags, because the little tips that you cut off sometimes get on the cookie and you don't realize it because they're clear. So just kind of dust off your cookie, just make sure that you have everything off of there. And then you just want to take a look at your cookie. Outlining is exactly what it is. It's outlining the cookie. So I'm going to, depending on how you want to hold your bag, this bag is really full of icing. So I don't tend to hold my bag way up at the top when I have this much icing in it. I tend to scoot down. Your bag may also feel like it has a lot of icing, so you can definitely hold your bag like that. You just don't want to hold it like a pencil. It's not really a pencil. So you want to hold it in a way that you help create pressure so that you can squeeze icing out. And you can practice, like you can practice on the middle of your cookie if you wanted to. It's totally up to you. You just want to kind of practice what it looks like, feels like for the icing to come out of there. Maybe you hold it different ways. Maybe you want to twist a little bit. These bags do pop eventually, but it takes quite a bit. So just kind of be careful with your pressure. Don't get too gung-ho on it. When I go to outline, I do hold my bag up above my cookie. See how whenever I lift it up, I have a little bit more control over the icing. So you can kind of practice that. We're just coloring this whole cookie in, so I don't really care about that. That can stay on there. So I'm just going to go through and create my Christmas tree. And I'm doing this way on purpose to show you, you do not have to have one continuous icing outline. You can break it up. I'm lifting up my bag, basically breaking off that chain. And every time I go in, I do lift my bag up off the cookie. Do not keep your tip of your bag down on the cookie, okay? So please do not outline your cookie like this. It is very hard to create a nice, pretty outline if you have the tip of your bag down on your cookie. So once you get that outline done and you're happy with it, then we can go in and flood. If you're not happy with it, just take your toothpick, scrape off the part that you're not happy with, or scrape off the whole thing. Another little tip, don't go all the way to the edge. You can see here, you can still see my naked cookie. So you do want to be able to see, I like to see a little bit of the naked cookie. It also helps when you're flooding. If you get a little too much icing in there, it helps with spreading, and it helps with allowing that icing to spread without flowing over the edge of your cookie. So again, now I'm going to go in and flood, and flooding doesn't really matter whether you have the tip down on your cookie or not. It is just simply flooding in the cookie with your green. Now this is where the point where you may be like, oh my gosh, this is going to take me forever. So it's at this point that you can cut your bag a little bit more. Remember, it just takes a little bit more to make it a little bit easier to come out, but flooding a cookie does take some time, okay? I know we all watch, and I even make the Instagram videos of people flooding cookies, and they do it in 10 seconds or less. And that is ultimately not reality unless you have your bag cut very, very big. This bag is, I don't want to cut it any bigger because I do want to be able to still make it pretty small. Any sort of details, if I wanted to put details on the stocking, or if I wanted to, also, if you want to outline another tree and you've already cut your bag open pretty big, then your outline on that tree is going to be very big. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you want to do all your outlining of every cookie, that is definitely helpful, because then you can cut your bags and make the holes a little bit bigger, and you don't have to worry about outlining. Another little tip for parents, if you're watching, it's really easy for you guys as parents to outline these cookies, and then your kiddos can flood them, and that creates a little bit less mess, and they feel a little bit more confident in flooding, because sometimes it's hard to outline. It's hard for me to outline sometimes, but for kiddos, sometimes it's even harder. So now I'm just going to take just little pinches of sprinkles, because I want them to look like ornaments. So I'm just going to kind of sprinkle them on. Normally I would just tell you just dump on the sprinkles, but if you want to, that's fine. But I want this to look like a Christmas tree. So I'm just going to kind of sprinkle some here and there. You could definitely be even more picky and use tweezers. It's up to you. I try to get all of them on the tree, but I like this little design. It's just a nice, and who doesn't like a little bit of crunch with the ornaments on the tree? All right, so now I can take my little gold star, and I don't need to put any icing down because I'm just going to set it right in that icing and push it down. Okay, so that's your Christmas tree. All right, so for the stocking, I'm going to be using red and green. You can use whatever colors you want to. Obviously, you have 3 stockings, so you can make one, in every single color. But I'm going to use the green for the top part, and then I'm going to use the red for the bottom part. And on the bottom part, I'm also going to be using the white, but I'm going to be doing a technique where I use my toothpick to drag to make a really pretty technique. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to outline just the bottom part of my stocking. Okay, so I'm just going to outline the bottom part of it, leaving the top part to flood here in a little bit. And I'm going to go in and flood this with red. And I'm going to flood the whole thing. So just like we've been doing on all the cookies, we want to flood all of this first. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my white and I'm going to basically drop in some lines. So I'm going to drop in some lines. They don't have to be straight. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about if they're crooked, if they're not even, all of that. Don't worry about that, because what we're going to do is basically mess it up. So it's kind of a perfect little technique to do. And you could do lines horizontal or vertical. I'm going to do some horizontal. So I'm going to do one there. Don't even worry if it curls up like that one did. See how it leaves a little top? That's okay. And what I'm going to do is take my toothpick or scribe, and I'm going to drag along the top part of the icing. I'm not dragging all the way down to the ground. I'm almost holding my toothpick at an angle as well. I'm not digging it straight down and pulling. I'm kind of just like shifting the icing on the top. That top layer. I just want to move the icing so that it will create this really pretty effect. So I did 3 lines down, and I'm just going to do 2 lines up. And I am wiping off my toothpick each time so that I don't have any residual icing. Okay. Oops. But isn't that a pretty technique? So pretty. If you have a little spillage like this one is, I'm just going to kind of scrape it off with my toothpick. Okay. And this cookie is doing this because this cookie is a little bit curved that way. It was a little like the spatula flattened it a little bit. So I'm just going to put my toothpick there to kind of offset it so it doesn't run off. And now I'm going to flood this part. And you could definitely do this part with the drag technique as well. Up to you. I am going to go ahead and cut this. And when you're going, you could just outline all these cookies. A good rule of thumb, especially for beginners, is just to go ahead and outline all the cookies. Outline all the cookies, all the different parts of the cookie, and then you can go back in and cut your bags a little bit bigger and then flood each of those parts. It also helps because the outline will dry a lot quicker. And so then when you go to flood that in, it won't be so apt to run over the edge. But if it runs over the edge, don't worry about it. That just means there's more cookie. More cookie to love. And you could definitely put anything you wanted to. If you wanted to do sprinkles on that part, know that you probably need to do that part first and then go ahead and do the drag, because trying to get sprinkles in one area when there's wet icing in another area right up to it is really hard. But this is a really cute cookie. I love the drag technique. It looks so pretty. Now we're going to work on our snowman. And our snowman is going to consist of black and white. And I also have my sprinkles for this one. So I have the black sanding sugar, and this is going to be for his hat. And then I have some eyes and noses in this little cupcake liner that we can use for his eyes, his nose, and his buttons on his body. Anytime you want to do sprinkles on a cookie, you definitely want to do those first. So we're going to go ahead and outline and flood his hat. And my black is cut pretty big because I used it for a cookie earlier. So I'm going to get another one so that I can outline it. Anytime your bag is cut a little too big, it's really hard to outline. So I always try to have another bag, or like I said in the previous video, you can definitely outline all these cookies and then go back and flood. There's no problem with doing that. There's a lot of people who work that way as cookiers. So I just eyeballed where his hat was. You can definitely make it different if you would like to. If you'd like to make it a different shape or go down a little farther on his head or go up a little higher, it's up to you. And so now I can go back in and you guys can see here the flood is really, really thick. It's cut very, very big. So I didn't want to outline with that. It would have been really hard. And more than likely, if I'm going to outline with that thick of black icing, the thickness of the bag being cut, if I outlined with a hole that big, it would just run over the edge. So I'm going to go ahead and smooth this out, make sure there's no gaps. I went all the way to the outline, make sure I like it, make sure it goes pretty smooth, and then I'm going to dump on my sprinkles. And this is going to be different than the Christmas tree. I'm going to literally dump them on. I want to make sure I cover all of those areas. Okay, and then you can kind of just tap it off and brush it off with your finger, and that is your snowman hat. All sprinkles are heavy, so this may run over the edge of your cookie because the standing sugar, nonpareils, all of that are heavy. So if it starts to run over and you don't want it to run over, then you can just do what I'm doing, and I'm just holding my cookie at an angle so that it kind of drips back down. It doesn't take very long for the icing to really set up. Especially just that top layer. It doesn't take very long for it to crust over. So you don't have to wait very long for it to do that. So now I'm going to outline in white. And all I'm doing when I wipe off my paper towel is just kind of sometimes it gets a little crusty out there, so I just want to make sure that that gets off of there. So I'm going to outline his face. And then I'm going to go ahead and follow the rest of the cookie around. If you had some white sanding sugar, you could definitely do some white sanding sugar on him, on his body. I'm just going to do white, just a white snowman. You could definitely separate him and do maybe the bottom on its own. You would just need to wait a couple hours in between doing them so that they would show some kind of dimension if you wanted to do that. But really, the snowman is probably one of the easiest cookies because it is just white and he has a little black hat. You could also decorate his hat if you wanted to. If you wanted to put a star on his hat, which I think I will. So I'm just going in and I'm flooding all of my snowman with my white. I'm getting kind of to the end of my bag of white. So I'm just going to flood this in, and then I'm going to go back with my toothpick, and I'm just going to make sure that these spaces right here kind of touch the outline. And if there's any places where you see that maybe it's a little kind of sunken in, you can see it's kind of not very flat right there. I'm just going to go in and put some more icing. It just means that there wasn't quite enough icing right there and it didn't go smooth. And if you go a little bit later, you know, like if you try to add icing a little bit later, you just need to kind of convince it. So I'm just going to tap on it. You don't necessarily have to tap your cookie. That's not what we have to do with this icing, but you can if you want to. So I'm going to do his little nose, and I'm just going to drop it in there. So cute. And then I'm going to try to find two eyes that are the same size. These bigger black kind of balls that we've got going, they are all the same. They are you know, all are from the same bottle, but they definitely are different sizes. So I definitely try to find ones that are the same. And then of course he needs his black buttons. And I'm just dropping those on where I want them. I'm pushing them in a little bit. You don't necessarily have to. The icing is super wet, so they're going to stick regardless. The eyes, oh yeah, his mouth. I'm going to use my black piping bag for his mouth. I'm not going to use my, you could definitely use some more of these little black ones. I just feel like they're a little too big. You could pick out other ones out of the little nonpareils, but I'm just going to use my black bag of icing to just give him a little smile. And I'm going to put a little dot of icing here. And this is going to be for my star. So I'm just going to stick my star here. Oh, isn't he cute? And that's your snowman. Another pretty easy cookie. All right, so now we're going to work on the star. And the star, we're just going to make this really pretty standing sugar star. It's probably one of my favorite Christmas cookies because it's so simple, but it always turns out so pretty. It adds to, you know, every Christmas platter. So again, my bag is cut pretty big. So notice I'm going way inside of my cookie. You guys can see there's quite a bit of, you know, like naked cookie around the edges here. That's because my bag is just cut so big. So if you've cut your bag open a little bit, or you know, maybe you're waiting till the end to do this one or these, then, but you know, just, you can definitely work with it. You just have to go on the inside of the cookie. You can't flood all the way to the edge. You can't outline all the way to the edge, sorry. So then I'm just going to go back in and flood. And I love glaze because I just love that it just goes so smooth. Now, if you weren't going to put sanding sugar on this, you could definitely outline a little bit closer to the edge, but because I'm going to put the sanding sugar on there, I know that it's going to weigh that icing down, and the icing might want to travel off of the cookie. So again, I'm going to just take my sanding sugar and kind of dust it on, but eventually I'm just going to kind of keep going around. And putting it on. You can always wait a little while if you want to. Once you get the sanding sugar on, if your icing isn't moving, you can definitely take your finger and move it out a little bit. It's up to you. The more that you dump on, the heavier it's going to be. Okay, and you want to take it and kind of tap it off. But isn't that a beautiful cookie? It's just very simple, delicious also. And I just love these kind of cookies that are simple, but you could do any of them. If you wanted to do one of the stars in red, and then you wanted to do one of the stars with the nonpareils, so super pretty, super cute. You could definitely do anything you wanted. You could do a black star if you wanted to. You could. It's just so versatile. So I hope you enjoyed this one. It was a really fun, simple cookie.